South Africa has reached an historic milestone in agricultural trade as its first shipment of premium locally grown and bred plums officially entered the Chinese market under a new bilateral trade protocol. At the epicenter of this shift are two flagship cultivars, Ruby Star and African Delight, developed by the Agricultural Research Council and commercialized with Culdevco. Joining me in studio joining me online to share more on what this means for the country is Professor Bongani Kaiser Ndimba, who is the Executive Manager for Crops, Natural Resources and Engineering at the ARC. Professor, thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, good afternoon, Gary. It's exciting to be here with you and your viewers. Thank you.
The protocol was signed in late 2025 and now implemented in early 2026. How has the ARC supported the speed and efficiency of this rollout for local packhouses?
Well, these two jewels, we call them, one of our superstars, have been tried and tested for quite a number of years. Over 10 years, we've been trading and selling them to our quote-unquote traditional market, which is Europe. And the customers there, they have loved them so much that we looked east to see whether we can get more stomachs to enjoy these what we call stone fruits. And China could not have come at a better time for many, many reasons. And yes, we're very proud to be central to the development of these two cultivars. And by cultivars, we mean material that is locally bred. The parents of these two fruits, their evaluation, their testing, pre and post commercialization has been done quite meticulously to meet our growers' standards as well as export criteria.
Sounds brilliant, but how does the recent bilateral agreement on zero tariffs change the competitive landscape for South African growers when compared to rivals like Chile, and which currently dominates over 90% of China's plum imports?
Well, absolutely. We are, as I say many times, that we're living in a dynamic world where the customer wants the best product. And when the host country has a friendly bilateral relations, which are doors that are normally opened over years and years of relations and negotiations, not only we have had a good relationship with China under various multilateral as well as bilaterals. This one came at a very, very good time. As I've mentioned in my article elsewhere, that China is the second largest market in the world in terms of their GDP. Secondly, they've got the largest population. So if you really wanted to put your rand in terms of investment, China and your product is the place to go.
Perhaps you refer to the stone fruit industry, and that includes peaches, nectarines, apricots and plums. And it's a significant part of South Africa's horticultural sector. What specific traits were researchers at the ARC targeting to specifically appeal to the Chinese consumer?
Well, just like our competitors in the Southern Hemisphere, and I underline, Southern Hemisphere, Chile will be one of the biggest players, Brazil, Australia on the eastern side. Those are our rivals. Well, Australia not only in fruit but also in rugby, but we will not talk about that today. So we looked for the longevity. Well, number one, let me be honest and say that we're looking for what the customer wants: the taste, the crunchiness, the juiciness. And second to that is, can the farmer in South Africa produce that under our harsh conditions? And if we can tick that box, the third trait is that it must travel minimum of 6 weeks in a container, because we ship mostly via freight, meaning sea freight. And therefore, it can be quite expensive if you're going to fly it over a few days. But if you are freighting it via sea, it must definitely keep post-harvest. Those are three main criteria that we tell our breeders to look for our winners.
From the ARC's perspective, Professor, how does a successful export deal like this trickle down to investment in rural infrastructure and development at SME farmer level?
Well, we do know South Africa has a long history of exporting of lots of fruits. You can talk about citrus, you can talk about palm fruit, which is apples and pears. But when it comes to stone fruit, very, very specifically, it's very soft fruit. it needs expertise, both at the farmer level as well as at the worker level. If you are very rough with these fruits, they might not make it to the market. So we are looking at really relatively well-trained workers, and hopefully with our minimum labor wages, they are much better than they were 10 years ago. And the more we get markets, the more our farmers will be attracted to buy our trees. And therefore, there are more workers, over 30,000, that are currently directly employed, indirectly employed in the value chain when it comes to pack houses, as well as families that they are supporting, because these people have got their husbands, they've got their wives and children they must take to school. So the trickle down of our fruit industry in partnership with our government as well as private sector partners, we are there as the ARC, as IP owner, one of the largest IP owners. When I say IP, I'm talking about intellectual property owners in the Southern Hemisphere. We're very, very proud to be in the epicenter of this innovation.
Professor, it's projected that this protocol could support hundreds of new jobs over the next decade. What were the biggest technical or scientific hurdles the ARC had to help farmers overcome to meet the General Administration of Customs of China as an export market?
Well, before we even get there, the first part of your question talks about the hurdles that our farmers must face. One of those is that we are one of the driest countries in the world, and therefore our land is very thirsty. So where we produce, it needs to have good and sustainable and predictable water. Secondly, we have what we call in South Africa as the deciduous fruit basket. That is the Mediterranean climate that we have in the Cape, mostly Stellenbosch, CRS, and the parts of the Western Cape, some part of the Eastern Cape. But our biggest hurdle had to be, how do we adapt to climate change? Because we've seen that in the last 20 to 30 years that the Western Cape land, not only is it expensive, it is really limited. And also there are more rains now that we're not expecting in summer. One of our biggest devastations a couple of weeks ago was a freak storm that we got. And sometimes our normally cool areas don't get as cool as we want them to be. And sometimes you get late frost, which can easily damage your stone fruit. So what I'm saying is that our ARC foresight has been to look for climate adaptable cultivars that can be adaptable outside the current, what we call historical and traditional province. So we're looking at that, number one. Number two is our ports, which might obviously be responsive to our consignments from our exporters. And after that, cold chain is very important. It was part and parcel of the phytosanitary requirement that Chinese wanted, as well as what we call biosecurity. ARC is part and parcel of what we call Fruit Fly Africa, where we do aerial baiting to make sure that the fruit don't get worms inside and get rejected when they land overseas. So that's basically what we as ARC are, the center pivot of this whole industry.
Prof, just very quickly, might this perhaps pave the way, this approval so fast of this export program, pave the way for other stone fruits like cherries and blueberries?
Absolutely. Well, the other fruits are not quite stone fruit, but I think because of the protocols, this is one of them most, if you talk about stone fruit, if you have trees in your house, you'll know that these are the ones that will be damaged by birds as well as by worms. But if you can get your stone fruit to go because it's so soft, apples definitely will pass, pears will pass, your citrus will pass, and then we're talking about other berries, etc. So we're looking very, very forward to us getting our market to double and quadruple. And our vision as the ARC for 2050, as well as the industry signed this pledge, is that we want to double this market. And 2050 is not very far. You know, those that are born a couple of years ago will be in the market for working as well as producing in 2050. It's only 25 years to come.
We're going to have to leave it there, Prof, but thank you very much for joining us.
Absolutely, and we're looking forward to the rest of it. And when West becomes tough, we go and look East. I won't say more.
Sounds like a good economic strategy. That was the Executive Manager for Crops, Natural Resources and Engineering at the ARC, Professor Bongani Kaiser Ndimba, giving an outlook on what can be expected from the new trade partnership deal with China.